They say there are places in America that never stop breathing. Places that don't change with time. They just sink deeper into their own roots, like something half asleep and older than history. Places like Black Hollow. I was born here, and yeah, I know how that sounds. Ethan Carter, 28 years old, still breathing the same air I came out screaming into. I've never lived more than 6 miles from the room I was born in, never traveled farther than a busted transmission would allow. I work at Roy's Hardware on Main, bagging nails and stacking propane tanks like clockwork. Customers nod, ask after my mom like she's still breathing, and pretend not to know how she went out. Booze, silence, bitterness. My dad died in the Massey mine collapse when I was 10, buried alive with 17 others, half of whom had been breathing coal dust since they were my age. They pulled out bones and boots, that was all. My mom drank through the next 6 years until there wasn't much left of her but shadows and slurred threats. That left just me and Noah, my baby brother. He's 16 now, quiet, angry, too smart for this town but too poor to leave it. I tried to raise him right, but hell, I was a kid too. We just kind of raised each other. Black Hollow's the kind of place people dream about leaving but never do. You can save every dime, swear up and down you'll hit the highway, but in the end, it holds you like roots in wet clay. Mira, Derek, Lena, we all grew up on the same streets, shared the same lunchroom fights, the same scraped knees and funeral clothes. We didn't stick around because we loved it. We stuck around because leaving costs more than money. It was Mira who suggested the hike that weekend. She'd just gotten off a hellish overnight shift at the ER and wanted fresh air, something to clear her head. Derek grumbled like always. Lena packed trail mix like it was a damn expedition. I grabbed my old DSLR, thinking maybe if I snapped the right angles of the dying trees, I could pretend my life was more than routine. More than grief and gas fumes and the smell of sawdust at Roy's. We weren't looking for trouble. We were just looking for something different. The path into Black Willow isn't on any map. Derek swore he knew the way. His uncle used to hunt deer out there back before the signs went up. No trespassing, no hunting, no nothing. You ever walk into a forest and feel like the trees are listening? That's what it felt like. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No birds, no breeze. Just the thick stillness that pressed against your chest like you'd gone underwater. We found the bones first. Animal bones, bleached, brittle, strung up from branches with twine. They swayed without wind, clicked together like dry teeth. Lena laughed, but it was forced. Someone's twisted idea of art, she said. Mira stopped walking. My grandma used to say, she murmured, when the forest strings bones, you turn around. We didn't. We found mining gear next. Old helmets with cracked lights, rusted pickaxes half sunk into the soil like the forest had swallowed them. There was a sense of time there, not just age, but weight, like everything had been left to rot exactly where it died. Then, at the base of a hollowed birch tree, we found it. The altar. Stones stacked uneven. Bits of rotting food, moldy and slick. A tin plate with something that looked too much like dried blood. And in the dirt, half buried under leaves, a child's dress. Torn. Stained. I laughed, mostly to break the tension. This is some Blair Witch shit, huh? No one laughed with me. I took a picture anyway. The frame caught the altar, the shadows, even Derek scowling off to the side. I swear the air got colder right after. That night I couldn't sleep. Not really. I kept thinking about that dress, that plate, the quiet. Then around 1 a.m., my phone buzzed. One message. No number. A photo. My front porch. Taken just minutes earlier. I stared at it, heart pounding, when another message came in. My bedroom window. Curtains half open. I froze. Called Mira. She answered on the first ring. You got one too? Yeah, I whispered. My porch, then my window. You? I'm parked at the hospital, she said, her voice shaking. It was my car. Someone took a photo of it just now. Ethan, I'm scared. Derek and Lena hadn't gotten anything. Not yet. I barely slept. Next morning, I hooked up a cheap security cam I'd bought from the hardware store just to be sure. What it caught made my blood run cold. For 5 minutes, nothing. Then, a hooded figure stepped into frame. Just stood there, facing the door. No movement, no sound. And then, gone. No footsteps, no fade. Just gone. I showed Derek. He stared, jaw clenched. "People don't vanish like that," he muttered. "That's not right." Then Lena called. Her voice was cracked and raw. "Binks is missing. Her dog. That mutt went everywhere with her. Slept at her feet, waited outside the diner for scraps. We searched for hours. Nothing. That night, someone left Binks's collar nailed to Lena's back fence. Old nail, bent, rusted. A note beneath it scrawled in jagged writing. "You took pictures, now we take." The days that followed were a blur of dread. Mira stopped sleeping. Carried pepper spray on her rounds at the ER. Said she saw a face pressed to the glass doors one night. When she was sure no one was out there, security found nothing. Derek's workshop wasn't broken into, but someone, or something, had covered his bench in dead crickets. Just piles of them, legs twitching, eyes like black beads. His grandma used to say it meant death was coming, Appalachian folklore. Derek punched a hole in his wall and bled through the bandages. "I didn't ask for this," he spat. "You and your damn camera." I didn't argue. Noah started sleepwalking. We'd find him standing in the hallway whispering to himself. Always the same thing. The lady in the trees. Once I found him barefoot in the yard, staring at the woods like he was waiting for something to call him home. We didn't call the cops, what would we say? "Help, the woods are watching us?" Mira wanted to talk to a priest. Lena just cried. And then, the final message came. A wooden cross, staked in my yard, wrapped in fur, Binks fur. A note in that same jagged script. "Give them back." That was the night Noah vanished. His shoes were still by the door. His sketchbook on the table. Just gone. We followed the trail, bare footprints, child-sized, leading toward Black Willow. No time to think. We grabbed flashlights. Ran. The deeper we went, the colder it got. No wind, just breathless air. And the trees, leaning in like they were listening again. Lena clutched Mira's hand like it was her only anchor. Then Derek saw it. A pit, shallow, freshly dug. Bones lined the bottom. Too many. Too small. And at the base of a gnarled oak, we found Noah. Unconscious, pale, alive. We pulled him out and ran like hell. He didn't speak for days, still doesn't. Just hums. And draws trees with hollow eyes. Mira quit the hospital, moved to Cincinnati, changed her number, never said goodbye. Derek drinks himself to sleep now. Keeps a knife on him. Won't talk about the woods. Lena adopted another dog. Keeps her windows sealed year-round, even in summer. And me? I stayed. Someone has to watch over Noah. I deleted the photos, burned the camera. Keep sage at the doors now, salt on the sills. But sometimes late at night I still hear it. Bones, clinking in the wind. They say some places remember, but I think some places never forget. Some places keep the things we stir up. Black Hollow sure as hell did. And I still wonder, what did we wake up that October? And if it remembers us, how long before it comes back? What would you do if the woods started remembering your name? The first time I heard about Black Purr, it was nothing more than a bullet point in a risk assessment form. The kind of town that shows up on the second page of a geological survey, the ones you skim through and forget. Population, unknown. Infrastructure, limited. Known hazards, old mine shafts, unstable terrain. I barely gave it a thought, just another dying speck in the middle of the South Australian outback. I was chasing what was left of a failing PhD in structural geology. 3 years into a research grant that had dwindled to pocket change and disappointment, I was trying to prove a theory no one cared about anymore. Something about the shifting fault lines beneath ancient salt domes. It made sense to me at the time. Still does on the better days. Black Pearl had an exposed formation I couldn't find anywhere else. A chance to salvage something from the wreckage of my academic career. I figured 2 weeks max. Collect samples, snap photos, hit the pub once or twice, then vanish back into anonymity. I arrived midwinter, July 2018. The kind of cold that doesn't hit your skin so much as crawl down your throat. My camper sputtered down a single cracked road that looked like it hadn't been maintained since the Reagan administration. Dust clung to the horizon like a permanent bruise. No welcome sign. Just a leaning telephone pole and a rusted water tank with Black Pearl faintly stenciled on its belly. It wasn't a town so much as a cluster of stubborn buildings. One pub, a clinic that operated 3 days a week, a petrol station that hadn't updated its prices since the 90s, and an old rail line that had long since surrendered to rust and weeds. But the mine, Rookery Mine, was the center of it all, sealed and silent, like a mouth stitched shut. It hadn't seen daylight since the collapse in '96. 23 men swallowed whole in less than 4 minutes. They say some bodies were never recovered. My digs weren't much. A decaying camper parked behind the methadone clinic, which doubled as a community medical post. I worked odd jobs ferrying patients into the next town for appointments, just enough to keep gas in the tank and ramen in my stomach. Every evening I made field notes under a flickering lamp and pretended like the cold drafts and strange sounds outside were just old pipes and paranoia. I first met Jock Madigan at the Digger's Rest, the only bar for 50 kilometers. Picture a building that's been losing a fight with gravity for 30 years. Inside smelled like sweat, old beer, and the kind of stories people only tell when they're sure no one is recording. The pool table in the back had lost most of its felt and dignity, but the locals still clung to it like it meant something. That night, I was nursing a cheap whiskey in a corner booth trying to look invisible. I wasn't in the mood for conversation, but Jock had other plans. Barrel-chested, balding, with a stare that never landed quite where it should. He was already deep in his cups and stumbling toward me like I owed him rent. "You spill something?" I asked when he slammed into my table, half a pint of lukewarm XXXX gold soaking my last clean shirt. He squinted at me. "Problem, city boy?" His breath was a cocktail of blood and Bundy. I should have let it go, just laughed it off, and backed down. But I was tired, angry, and too broke to buy another shirt. So instead of walking away, I stood and let the screwdriver from my belt loop thump against his sternum. A silence fell across the bar. Then Jock smiled. Not the kind of smile you want to see on a man like him. The kind that says, "Good, now I don't have to pretend." We tumbled out into the alley like cartoon characters gone wrong. The dirt was slick with something oily. Chemical runoff, I later learned. Leftovers from when the mine used to dump its waste behind the bar. Jock came at me hard, fists like cinder blocks. I dodged mostly out of luck, then hit the ground when my boot caught a buried pipe. He was over me, boot raised, nostrils flaring. Then came the voice. "Enough, Jock. Time to go home." The figure stepped out of the dark like smoke forming into shape. He moved slow, not because he was weak, but because he had nothing left to hurry for. The super, they called him. Last surviving supervisor from the collapse, or so the whispers went. Always in the same jacket, fluorescent orange turned rust brown by time. Carried a geologist's hammer like it was part of him. Jock froze. Not afraid, something worse. Like he'd been reminded of something he'd spent years trying to forget. "You ain't got the right," he muttered. The super raised his hammer, not to swing, just to point. "This is still mine, even if the pumps are off, even if they buried the shaft." Jock didn't answer. He looked past the super and his face drained like someone watching their own grave being dug. Then he turned and ran. Didn't stop, just disappeared into the bush. The super turned to me. "You earned your drink," he said. Then he vanished into the alley mist, silent as he came. The next morning, Jock's ute was found abandoned near Shaft 4, one of the sealed-off mine entrances. Police shrugged. "Dust got him," Sergeant Knox said, as if that explained anything. I didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. Things shifted after that. No one mentioned the fight. My screwdriver disappeared, replaced with a bottle of top-shelf whiskey behind the bar. The locals started calling me Doc, though none of them asked what I was studying. Just nodded like I knew things they didn't want to understand. But behind the tool shed, I noticed a new patch of cement. Fresh. Still drying. And the super's boots? Always wet, even when the air was bone dry and the ground cracked like old paper. I left Blackpur that August. Got a teaching gig down south at a community college where no one asked questions. Told kids about fault lines and mineral seams. But I never slept right again. The dreams came first. Scratching at windows, always just out of view. The weight of the ground pressing down on my chest like it wanted me back. Then the postcards. Every July. No return address. Just 5 words. Jock says hello. The paper smelled of sulfur and rust. I burned the first one. Thought it was a prank. The next year's had a fingerprint. Red. Sometimes I still hear the super's voice. Soft. Patient. Naming rock types. Soil layers. Like he's still walking those shafts, cataloging the dead. Like he's waiting for me to finish the job. I tried resubmitting my fieldwork to the university. The ethics board flagged it. Said my notes were unstable and emotionally compromised. Can't blame them. I know what I saw, what I felt. And every time the ground shifts beneath my feet, I remember Blackpur. Some places don't forget. Some things don't forgive. And some people, they never leave. The question is, what would you do if the earth itself remembered you and didn't want to let go? They say there's a silence you don't come back from. Not the kind that's peaceful or earned, but the kind that settles inside you, heavy and sharp, like glass dust in your lungs. I was 9 the day it started for me. Maybe it started before that. Maybe it started the day Ma'am said yes to the house. It was an old surgery in Balfour Glen, halfway up a dead-end road that ran out into mist. The sign still hung crooked near the gate. Dr. E. McGreedy, general practitioner. It had been empty for over 20 years. Ma'am said it had potential. Da said the mortgage was half what it should be. I said nothing. Kids don't get a say in these things. Balfour Glen wasn't much more than a few cottages and a closed-down pub. The post office only opened twice a week. The school was 3 rooms and a bell. The people didn't smile much. The woman next door watched us unload the van like she was watching a bad omen arrive. Her eyes lingered a little too long on me. I remember feeling cold even though it was June. Ma'am scrubbed the kitchen like she was trying to erase something. Said it smelled like damp and old medicine. Da repainted the surgery rooms and pulled the blackout blinds tight. Iona, my older sister, spent the first week filming TikToks and calling it our haunted murder house. She was 15, wore eyeliner too thick, and had a new best friend every month. She was supposed to watch me when Ma'am worked shifts and Da did nights down in Annecy, but mostly she ignored me. I noticed things right away, little things. The cellar door never stayed shut, no matter how many times Da screwed it closed. The floor creaked at night like someone walking in a tight circle. The windows had smudges, greasy, high up, like handprints from someone tall, but the glass never looked broken. Ma'am said old buildings made noise. Da said I had an imagination like his sister, who'd seen ghosts in every hotel room she ever stayed in. Iona just called me a weirdo. I didn't tell them about the first man I saw outside. It was early September. I was putting out the recycling. A man stood at the edge of the woods, barefoot, his eyes black like wet stones, just staring. He didn't move when I shouted, didn't blink. Just stood there until Ma'am called me in. I turned back once and he was gone. I told Mr. Dunlop at school. He gave me detention for making things up. Told Ma'am I was looking for attention. She gave me a spoonful of cough syrup and tucked me in early. Said I needed rest, that it was just a dream. But it wasn't. Because the next morning I found muddy footprints under the kitchen window. Long ones, bare. Over the next few months, the tension in the house changed. You could feel it. The air felt tighter, like breathing through wet wool. Ma'am started lighting candles and whispering prayers in the hallway. Da put up motion sensor lights, even though he hated wasting electricity. Iona didn't notice, or pretended not to, but I did, especially on March 17th. That night I took out the bins after dinner. The wind had picked up, smelled like pond water and bleach. I saw them near the hedge. 4 of them, maybe 5. 1 tall. The others crawling like broken puppets, all in hospital gowns, soaked and clinging to skin that looked gray and too tight. Their movements didn't make sense, too slow, too jerky. One held something. A sack? No, it pulsed. It had tubes hanging out. And then the tall one smiled. Not like a person smiles. More like someone stretching skin where it doesn't belong. I ran, skinned both knees on the gravel, slammed the door, screamed for Iona. She rolled her eyes and called me a freak, said I needed to stop watching creepy YouTube videos. But they stayed outside, for hours. I could hear them moving, whispering. The tall one tapped the letterbox and whispered, "Come see what we've unstitched." When Ma'am and Da got home, I told them everything. Da searched the yard with a flashlight. Nothing, just wet grass. Ma'am wrapped a blanket around me and asked if I'd been having nightmares again. She gave me another dose of cough syrup. I didn't sleep that night. The tapping came back. Just once. Light. Like fingers on skin. The next day, the village had its theories. The constable said it was probably local kids pulling a prank. Old Tam from the pub said that house should have stayed boarded up. He told Da the cellar used to be where Dr. McGreedy kept the ones he couldn't save. Said the doc came home from the war different. Said he whispered to his patients long after they stopped breathing. Ma'am didn't want to hear it. Da tightened the window locks. Iona posted a video titled, "My house is legit haunted LOL." But they kept coming. Every night for a week, I heard them, moving just outside, sometimes whispering, sometimes tapping, sometimes just standing still, breathing like a rusted fan. Once I found a surgical glove in my backpack, inside out, still damp. I didn't tell anyone. By the next year, I'd learned to live with it. I kept a knife under my pillow, locked my door, slept light. And then March 17th came again. Da was on night shift. Ma'am had taken her blue pills early and was snoring softly. Iona was upstairs yelling into her phone about some boy. And then I heard them. Not whispering, not tapping, scraping, dragging. The sound of wet cloth on glass. I ran to the living room. The tall one stood by the hedge, closer now. His gown fluttered, revealing veins like burnt wires. He lifted one hand, waved. Behind him, the others dragged something out of the bushes. It thrashed, it cried, it was in a bag. I screamed. Iona finally believed me when the back window shattered. We shoved chairs under the doorknobs. I held the knife like I knew what to do with it. Iona sobbed into the phone begging the police to come. The things didn't come inside. They watched, waited. When the constable's truck finally rolled up, they vanished. He didn't believe us. Took a statement, shook his head, said we were lucky it wasn't a fox, but in the backyard he found too many footprints and gauze, wet. A month later we moved to Sterling. The surgery was boarded up again. No one said a word. Ma'am refused to talk about it. Da drank more. Iona got quiet, mean. She left for Glasgow the next year. I never slept right again. I'm 19 now. I work nights at the Fort William petrol station. It's quiet, most nights. Just me, the hum of the fridge, and the wind against the glass. But every March 17th I find them. Gloves, inside out, in the bin room. Once, one was still warm. I don't tell anyone. What's the point? Ma'am doesn't call. Da's in some care unit, they say. Iona teaches yoga now, pretends none of it happened. I read medical books, understand things I never studied. Diagrams make sense, surgical cuts, stitch patterns, like something left a mark in me. Sometimes I think they never left. Sometimes I think they're waiting for me to come back. And I will. Not to prove anything, not to warn anyone, just to see if I still hear them. Because part of me wonders, am I theirs now? Or are they mine? When a child says they're afraid, why don't we believe them? Until it's too late. I wasn't born in Cedar Hollow, but I've lived here long enough to know that something in this town has been rotting from the inside for decades. The rot doesn't announce itself. It seeps in, quiet, slow, like black mold behind a pretty wall. On the surface, everything looks normal. Kids ride bikes down Maple Street. You can still get peach cobbler and bottomless coffee at Maybell's Diner. And there's a pumpkin patch behind the First Baptist Church every fall. But there are places in town where the air feels wrong, too heavy like it's holding its breath. You don't notice it at first. Not until you've been here long enough to see what people don't say. It's not what they do that gets to you. It's what they refuse to admit, what they bury in silence. I came here in 2011, fresh out of WVU with a social work degree and a glove box full of overdue student loan bills. I thought I could help. That was my first mistake. I thought if I just worked hard enough, listened long enough, I could help people dig themselves out of whatever pain was keeping them stuck. But Cedar Hollow doesn't want fixing. It wants forgetting. My name's Ethan Weller. I'm 37 now. The year I moved here, I still believed kids were resilient, and that truth always mattered. I had no idea what resilience looked like in a town like this. I had no idea what truth would cost. The Cooper family lived up in the North Ridge area, past where the pavement starts to crack and the mailboxes look half swallowed by the brush. James and Sarah Cooper were quiet people, kept to themselves, paid bills on time, never missed a school recital. Their son Tyler was 5. Their daughter Hannah was 9. She was in my caseload. That's not a detail I can afford to forget. Not now. The official report said it was a home invasion gone wrong. Drugs, most likely. Some drifters, maybe meth heads, broke in, got spooked, left 3 people dead. The story was clean enough to print. The sheriff, Clay Whitmore, shook my hand outside the coroner's office and thanked me for helping with the paperwork. But I knew better. I remember sitting in my car that night staring at my rear view like something might be sitting in the back seat. I couldn't sleep, couldn't drink enough to feel settled. 2 days before the murders, I had visited the Coopers for a routine check-in. Hannah made blackberry cobbler and served it with paper napkins and a weird kind of calm. While we ate, she asked me what death smells like. I didn't know how to answer her. She said it like someone asking if you've ever seen a snow leopard. Curious, bright-eyed, detached. I laughed it off. I wish I hadn't. That was the last time I saw her alive, or thought I did. A year later, nearly to the day, I opened my mailbox and found a pink ribbon, the kind little girls wear to school on picture day. This one was faded, frayed at the edges, stained like it had been buried. But I recognized it immediately. There was a small unicorn button glued to the center. Hannah had worn it during our last visit. There was no return address, no note, just the ribbon. I stood on the porch for 10 minutes, staring at it. My fingers felt cold, even though it was warm that morning. The kind of crisp October air you wait for all year. The kind that smells like burnt leaves and football practice. I didn't call the sheriff. Clay and I went to high school together, class of '07. We drank the same cheap whiskey at graduation and threw the same footballs on Friday nights. But after the Coopers died, something cracked between us. He came to my office 2 days after the funeral, said, "Ethan, this town needs closure, not chaos. If you want to help, shut up." And I did. I shut up and went back to my desk, back to the pile of case files that no longer looked like isolated tragedies but unfinished stories. I drove out to the Cooper house that night. The for sale sign was gone, neighbors said it was stolen, but no one ever put up another one. The swing set was still there, rusted stiff, one chain dragging in the dirt. The windows were boarded up, the wood warped and dark like dried blood. Inside, everything had been gutted. No furniture, no curtains, no rugs. Just a hollow space where a family used to be. I stepped into Tyler's old bedroom. On the wall, drawn in thick black crayon, was a stick figure scene. 4 people, 3 with X's for eyes, 1 smiling. That drawing hadn't been there a year ago. As I backed out of the room, my boot knocked something soft. I looked down and saw a green plastic dinosaur. Its neck was torn, hanging by a thread of foam stuffing. Then I heard giggling. Soft, childlike. It echoed from the hallway like it didn't belong in the same time zone as my heartbeat. I pulled my grandfather's revolver from my waistband, slow, trying not to breathe too loud. I turned the corner. Nothing. Just shadows. No giggling. No child. I left the house in a fog, but I couldn't shake the sound. It followed me home, into sleep. That night, I dreamed of Hannah standing at the foot of my bed. She held the ribbon in one hand and a knife in the other. "You were supposed to protect me," she said, and she smiled like she meant it. The next morning, I drove to First Baptist. The Fall Festival Committee was already stringing up lights, carving pumpkins, pretending nothing was wrong. I hadn't been to service in over a year, but I slipped into the back pew anyway. The same stained glass window with the lamb and the shepherd still caught the light just right. The same old hymns floated through the air like incense, and the same damn pew was still roped off. Second row, far left, reserved for the Lord's grace. That's what Pastor Glenn told me once. "Some pews stay empty for the same reason some doors stay locked," he said. "They're not meant for us." After the final amen, I tracked down Gloria Simmons, the church secretary. "Anyone new in town lately?" I asked. She tilted her head. "You mean visitors?" "I mean someone staying. Permanent." She paused. "There's a new waitress at Maybell's. Just moved in from Morgantown, I think. Real quiet, pale, doesn't talk much." I drove to Maybell's before the lunch crowd. She was behind the register, hair pulled into a low ponytail, no name tag, slim build, straight posture. When she turned, my chest went tight. She looked just like Sarah Cooper. Same cheekbones. Same way she tucked her hair behind her ear. "You new around here?" I asked. "Yes, sir." Her voice was flat. "Just moved." "Got family here?" She hesitated. "No, sir. No family left." I didn't press, just watched her walk toward the kitchen. That night I dreamed of the old well near the edge of town. They say it's dried up. Others say it never ends. When I was 16, we dared each other to spit in it, see if we could hear it hit bottom. I hadn't been there in 20 years. But something in me said if Hannah was still in town, she'd be there. And I was right. She came out of the woods barefoot, caked in mud, older, but not by much. Her eyes were dull, hollow in a way no child should be. "You never told them the truth," she said. I tried. "You chose to forget." She held out a second ribbon. This one was mine. A gift I gave her once after court, forgotten until now. "You left this in my house," she said. "After the funeral, I watched you cry in Tyler's room. I couldn't remember it, but I believed her." "What do you want from me?" I asked. She stepped closer. "To finish what I started." The next day I didn't go to work. Couldn't. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every shadow dragged too long. Then came the knock. Sheriff Clay stood on my porch. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in. He didn't sit. "She came to the station," he said. "Asked for you. Said she had a story to finish." "And you let her walk out?" "She's a kid, Ethan. What the hell are we supposed to do? Lock her up for surviving?" No, I said, for coming back. We buried the Coopers, he said. We buried all of it. That's the problem. We buried it. You're the one who pushed for silence, he snapped. You think you're clean in this? I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. That night, the fall festival lit up the church parking lot. Kids laughed, cider flowed. At 9:13 p.m., someone heard giggling by the well. By 10:02, the lights flickered. By 10:17, the girl running the ring toss booth was gone. All they found was a pink ribbon nailed to the wooden pole. I still carry the revolver. Not to stop her, to finish it if I have to. Because some silences don't keep us safe. They just keep us complicit. And Cedar Hollow has been quiet far too long. So now I ask you, when the truth costs more than a lie, would you still tell it? Or would you choose the silence too? By October of 2022, I was 27 and scraping the edges of burnout. Teaching high school English in Springfield, Illinois, for a third year sounds manageable until you're in it. Until the lesson plans blur, the essays pile up like bad dreams, and your sleep feels more like a pause button than rest. I'd started drinking more coffee than water, grading during lunch, skipping dinners, and answering students' questions with half of my mind somewhere else. And Ethan? Well, he was part of the unraveling too, though neither of us said that out loud. He was a paramedic, on call at all the wrong hours, coming home when I was crawling into bed, leaving when I hadn't even made it to my first cup of caffeine. 4 years together, and we were more like co-workers in the same apartment. We fought in short, tired bursts about laundry, bills, the thermostat, whether or not we should finally move to Chicago like we used to dream about. But I knew those weren't the real fights. The real argument was the silence that hung between us when there was nothing left to complain about. So when Ethan came home on a Thursday night and said, "Let's get out of town this weekend," I didn't ask questions, I just nodded. Maybe we needed a reset. Maybe we just needed space that didn't have our names on the lease. We pointed at a random spot on the map, Wood Creek, 2 hours south, tiny, barely a dot on GPS. He liked the sound of no crowds. I liked the idea of no lesson plans. We packed light, filled the gas tank, and didn't say much during the drive. Just the occasional comment about cornfields, clouds, and radio static. Wood Creek came into view just before sundown. One long strip of road, a gas station that looked like it sold more lottery tickets than fuel, and a diner where the neon letters flickered between burgers and Urger. At the far end of town was a tired-looking building with a sign that blinked Sunset Pines Motel in pink and red. It looked like the kind of place truckers used for naps and teenagers avoided on prom night. The parking lot was gravel and puddles, and when we pulled in, the air felt colder than it should have. Not weather cold, something else. Still, we were there. No reason to be dramatic about it. Inside, the lobby smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner. A man behind the desk barely glanced at us when we walked in. Late 50s maybe, thin white hair, and a kind of stillness that made you think of wax figures more than people. "Checking in?" he asked, already reaching for a key. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, just one night." He handed over a brass key with the number 7 on it. "Down the hall, last door on the left." "Thanks," I said, but he didn't look at me. Just kept his eyes fixed on something behind us. Ethan didn't notice. He was scrolling his phone like always, half present. We didn't talk as we walked down the hallway, our footsteps sounding louder than they should have. Every door we passed looked identical. Beige, scratched, tired. Number 7 was at the end, just like he said. We unlocked it and pushed the door open, and everything went still. There was someone already in the room. A woman, sitting cross-legged on the bed, facing the far corner, her back to us. Her hair was wet, long, dark, stringy, and she wore a light blue dress that clung to her like it hadn't been meant for her body, like it had belonged to someone else. She didn't turn, didn't flinch, just sat there motionless like she'd been waiting for hours. I stepped back, heart already hammering. "Ma'am?" I said, barely above a whisper. Nothing. Ethan glanced up from his phone and froze. Hey, we have this room. You okay? Still no response. No movement. No acknowledgement we were there. It wasn't just strange, it was wrong. The air felt heavier. The silence wasn't empty. It was watching us. We backed out slowly, closed the door, and stood in the hallway without speaking. Ethan exhaled sharply. What the hell was that? I don't know, I said. She didn't even move. Maybe she's on something, he muttered. Meth or fentanyl or whatever, or she's just, I don't know, mentally ill. I didn't say it. But what scared me wasn't that she looked sick. It was that she looked expectant, like we were the ones in the wrong room. We went back to the front desk. The man looked up this time slower than before. There's someone in 7, Ethan said. A woman. The clerk's expression didn't change. He didn't ask for details. Just looked down the hallway behind us and said quietly, "She's not supposed to be here tonight." Then he opened a drawer, pulled out another key, and handed it over. Try 9. No explanation, no apology, nothing else. We didn't argue. I didn't want to know more. I think deep down I already knew enough. Room 9 was just as depressing. Yellowed walls, a TV older than my car, sheets that smelled like someone else's sweat. Ethan fell asleep in minutes. I stayed up, listening to the faucet drip and staring at the water stain on the ceiling. But what I kept seeing wasn't the ceiling. It was her. That posture, that stillness. The way she faced the corner, not like she was lost, but like she belonged there. And for some reason, like she was waiting for us. In the morning, the lobby was locked. No clerk, just a paper sign on the door. Closed for cleaning. No receipt. No checkout. We got in the car and drove home in silence. Ethan turned the radio up loud, like he was trying to fill the space with noise. I didn't ask questions until we were nearly back. "Do you think she was okay?" He shrugged. "Just some local offer meds. Happens." Then he changed the subject to something stupid. Sports, maybe. I don't remember. But I never really moved on, not like he did. In the weeks after, I started zoning out at work. I'd forget what sentence I was on mid-lecture. A student asked if I was okay. I lied, said I was tired. I tried to find the motel online, no official website. Just a few blurry photos on Google Maps, and a handful of old reviews, most from years ago. One of them just said, "Don't stay in room 7, ever." Ethan and I broke up a few weeks later. The fight wasn't about the woman, not directly, but I think she sat at the center of it like a weight neither of us could name. He told me to let it go. I told him, that's the problem. Nothing happened, and it still won't let go of me. After he moved out, I stopped going anywhere alone at night. I started keeping a small white noise machine by my bed. If a room got too quiet, I'd get uneasy. Silence started to feel like a warning instead of peace. I developed this habit, checking corners of rooms before I settled in. Even my classroom, even friends' places. I never figured out who she was, or if she was anyone. And that's the thing that stays with me most. Not the weirdness of what we saw, but how everyone else just accepted it. The man at the desk, Ethan. No one asked questions, they just moved on. Sometimes I think about that room and wonder what would have happened if we hadn't backed out. If we'd walked in all the way, spoke louder, touched her shoulder. Sometimes I wonder if she'd have turned around. And more than anything, I wonder what we'd have seen if she did. So now, when people ask me for travel advice, I tell them this. Don't take the last room at the end of the hall. And if you open a door and someone's already inside, sitting too still, looking the wrong way, don't ask why. Just close the door. Some questions don't need answers, but let me ask you this. If it were you, would you have turned on the light and stepped further in? Or would you have walked away like nothing ever happened? Some towns don't whisper your name when you pass. They scream it just quiet enough that you're not sure if it's real. That was Brightonvale, Illinois. Population just north of 3,000. But it felt like every eye in that place had memorized the way I walked. I didn't come for charm or small-town magic. I came because I had nowhere else to go. Fall of 2020. I was 26 and freshly undone, newly single, jobless, and scraping the bottom of my bank account. I'd been living in St. Louis, working as a pharmacy tech and making the biggest mistake of my life by getting involved with my boss. It wasn't some whirlwind affair. It was slow, confusing, full of little compromises, and when it ended, when he went back to his wife, I was left with a dead-end job, side eyes from coworkers, and the kind of silence that makes you wonder if you imagined the whole thing. I quit before they could fire me, packed what I had into my Honda and just drove. Brightonvale was a pin on the map, a place I could afford. I found a room above a bait shop off County Road 9. The heat barely worked, and the hallway smelled like old carpet and stale tobacco. But I didn't care. It was mine. I got hired for overnight shifts at Holloway's Pharmacy, one of those old-fashioned drugstores with a soda fountain that hadn't served anything in a decade. It looked like it belonged in a postcard, but it ran on skeleton crews and outdated systems. I worked 5 nights a week, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. No customers after 10, just inventory, shelf checks, cleaning. Chuck trained me. Late 40s, built like an old bar stool, grimy, solid, always there. He had that small-town confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you're rooted deeper than anyone else. He'd been working at Holloway's since he was a teenager, and he carried that weight like it made him sheriff of the back room. At first, he was nice. Too nice. Hovering while I worked, making little comments that felt like fishing lines. City girl like you must be used to something faster. Don't get too bored here now. Late nights get awful quiet. You ever get spooked working alone? I'd smile, nod, pretend I didn't hear the way his voice dropped just enough to make it feel personal. When he offered me a ride one morning, standing by the time clock with that tight smile, I declined. Said, "Thanks, but I'm good." He didn't push, but something in his face shut down, like I'd just flipped a switch. After that, the friendliness evaporated, and what replaced it, it wasn't rage, it was worse. It was calculated. My inventory sheet started going missing. Items I'd stocked were suddenly misplaced. He'd make jokes near the manager, loud and sharp. "Looks like someone's having a rough night, huh?" Once, he accidentally knocked his coffee all over my phone. Just a full cup, sweet, hot, cream-heavy, right into the charging port. I had no GPS, no emergency contacts, no way to call anyone if I needed help walking home through pitch-dark streets, but he never yelled, never cursed, just kept smiling. That's the thing about people like Chuck. They don't need to break the rules. They just bend them until you snap. 2 weeks in, I walked into the manager's office nervous as hell. Her name was Diane, late 50s, lipstick always smudged, and an old calendar from 2016 still pinned above her desk. I told her I thought Chuck was trying to sabotage me. She barely blinked. "Chuck's been with us a long time," she said. "He's rough, yeah, but loyal." I felt my throat close. "It just feels like he's trying to get me in trouble." "Don't take it personal," she said. "That's just Chuck's way." That line, it stuck in my chest like a hook. I heard it again from another tech a few days later. She pulled me aside and whispered that Chuck was telling people I was hooking up with customers after hours. "He probably doesn't mean anything by it," she said. "Guys talk." I wanted to scream. I didn't. Because where would it go? Who would listen? I started taking pictures of every shelf I stocked. Not on a phone, mine was dead, but with a disposable camera I bought from a gas station. I triple-checked everything. I bought a flip phone off Craigslist just to have a lifeline. Still, I got written up twice for inventory errors I knew I didn't make. Chuck didn't have to lie. He just had to suggest. When I finally quit, Diane didn't even ask why. She just nodded, wished me luck, and went back to whatever paperwork kept her from seeing what was right in front of her. I thought I could move on. I applied to a pharmacy 2 towns over. They liked me. The manager said, "You're exactly what we need. We'll just call your last job for a reference." I never heard back. It happened again and again, until a girl I knew from a Facebook group messaged me back. "Your old boss said you had some behavior issues." Sorry. Chuck didn't need to ruin me publicly. All he needed was a phone. I started cleaning houses, walking dogs, anything cash-based. Eventually, I got weekend shifts at a thrift store that didn't ask questions. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was safe. I still live above the bait shop. The hallway light still flickers, but I walk different now. Slower, eyes up. I don't take favors. I keep records. I don't laugh when it feels wrong, and I don't let men like Chuck take anything from me without a fight. In towns like Brighton Vale, silence protects predators. Loyalty means never asking questions. Girls like me, we're too easy to discredit, too easy to frame as trouble. But the truth doesn't disappear just because nobody listens. So speak up, even if your voice shakes, even if no one believes you, even if it costs you everything. Because what's the alternative? Living quiet or living free? What would you choose? I'll now begin writing the full version. If at any point you'd like to change direction or revise the tone, feel free to interrupt. It doesn't take a gun to ruin your life, just a slow drip, one compromise, one lie you swallow, then another. And before you know it, the person in the mirror isn't someone you'd root for, let alone recognize. That's how I got here. That's how I ended up on a park bench in the middle of a Georgia town I no longer had a place in, wearing a hoodie that smelled like yesterday's sweat and a scarf that still smelled like my grandmother's house, waiting for the night to spit me out or swallow me whole. I used to think heartbreak would look like screaming, plates shattering, a scene. But when my 3-year relationship ended, it wasn't with fire, it was with frost. I found out from a text that wasn't meant for me. A friend had meant to message her sister, not me. She's gonna flip when she sees them at the brewery tonight. That's how I learned my boyfriend had been sleeping with someone from work. Not even a fight, not even the dignity of catching him in the act. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just packed. 2 bags, 1 duffel, 1 old hiking backpack with a broken strap. I left the apartment without saying a word. Walked straight out the door like I was going to the store. Millbridge, Georgia. Population just over 6,000. No car. $28.14 in my checking account. The kind of town where everybody knows everybody, and nobody really knows anyone at all. I called my closest friend, asked if I could crash on her couch. She texted back, "Sorry, girl, not a good time." I wrote, "It never is." By 11:30 p.m., I'd walked the town twice, past closed shops and empty porches lit by bug zappers. My feet were blistered, my stomach hurt from hunger and something deeper. I ended up in Morgan Square. It wasn't much of a square, just a cracked brick fountain, 2 rusting benches, and some old oaks that looked like they'd seen every mistake this town had to offer. I picked the bench farthest from the road and tucked my bags under me like I could protect them with body heat and hope. I wore a hoodie, black jeans, and the red scarf my grandmother knit for me when I was 16. It still smelled faintly like her laundry room, dryer sheets and lavender. I closed my eyes, opened them, closed them again. Somewhere between the clicks of wind through dry leaves and the hum of a faraway train, I must have drifted. At 2:30 a.m., I heard footsteps, the kind that crunch gravel slow, not hurried, not lost, the kind of walk that knows exactly where it's going. When I opened my eyes, a man was sitting on the far end of the bench, mid-40s maybe, scruffy beard, gray at the temples, faded green jacket that looked military surplus. He held a white plastic grocery bag by its neck. Something heavy pulled it down. He didn't look at me at first, just sat back like it was his spot, his time. Then he turned slightly and said, casual as a diner order, "Got a light?" I shook my head. "No, Sorry. He kept looking at me, like he wasn't looking at me, just through me. You sure? Yeah, I said. He didn't press, just nodded once and leaned back again. Let the bag rest on the ground between his boots. The smell hit me then. Gasoline, faint but sharp, like it clung to his jacket. We sat in silence, the kind that felt less like quiet and more like a waiting room for something bad. My phone was nearly dead. My body was stiff. I didn't know where to go, but I knew I couldn't stay. After maybe 15 minutes that felt like hours, I stood up. I should go. He didn't say anything. Didn't look. Just stayed there, like a statue, or a ghost. I walked fast toward First Street. There had been a 24-hour diner there years ago. The sign was still flickering. Inside were 2 waitresses and 3 old guys playing cards. I hovered outside, pretending to read the menu in the window, like I could afford anything on it. I stayed there under the awning for 30 minutes, watching the steam from their coffee cups and the shape of the night outside. By sunrise, I was walking back to Morgan Square, hoping he was gone. My bags were too heavy to carry all day. I figured I'd grab them, find a bathroom, and make a plan. But the bench was empty. My things were gone. Gone like they'd never existed. Not even the plastic water bottle I'd left behind. Except one thing. My red scarf, folded neatly, placed dead center on the bench. I didn't fold it like that. At 7:30 a.m., I walked to the sheriff's office. It didn't open until 8, so I sat on the cold concrete like a dog waiting for scraps. When they let me in, I explained, or tried to. You were sleeping in the square? The deputy asked. He looked like a cartoon version of a cop. Round gut, drawn-on mustache, beige uniform too clean for someone who's supposed to know the streets. I didn't have anywhere else to go. Well, he said with a shrug, that's not exactly safe. No kidding. I gave them a list of what I'd lost. Duffel, 2 changes of clothes, phone charger, shampoo, toothbrush, ID. Nothing traceable, nothing they cared about. No cameras in the square, the deputy added. Just trees. He handed me a printout of shelters in nearby counties. I called the closest one on his office phone. We're full, the woman said. Try again tomorrow. That was it. No case number, no report, just a printout in the door. As I walked out, I passed a woman crying in the waiting room. No one looked up. That was when I knew. Girls like me don't go missing. We disappear. I used the last of my money to take a bus to a slightly bigger town, one with a bus station and a public laundromat. I spent the night there, pretending I was waiting for someone, pretending I had somewhere to go. I washed the scarf in the bathroom sink, dried it under the hand dryer, tied it around my neck like armor. The next morning, I found a food pantry. A woman named Miss Clarice gave me a granola bar and quietly slid me the number of a shelter. It was small, but they had a spot. That's where I stayed. For 2 months. I got a job at a hardware store, bought a cheap phone, saved up for shoes that didn't blister, kept my head down. I never saw the man in the green jacket again. I still don't know if he took my things or if someone else came after I left, but I remember the way he sat beside me, like he belonged to the night, like I did too. He didn't threaten me, didn't touch me, but he didn't have to, because what haunted me most wasn't what he did. It was how easy it had been to vanish, how no one even looked. Being invisible isn't safe. It's dangerous. In small towns, in quiet parks, in diners where no one asks what you're doing under the awning. People like to believe bad things don't happen here, but they do. And when you're young, broke, and alone, the scariest thing isn't the darkness. It's how easily you slip into it, and how no one notices. No one's coming to save you. So you learn to keep walking, even when no one's watching, especially then. If you saw a girl sitting alone at a bus station tonight, would you ask if she was okay? Or would you keep walking too? I was 19 when everything started to slip. My mom had just checked into rehab for the third time, this one in Kentucky, and I didn't have anywhere else to land. College hadn't worked out. I flunked half my classes sophomore year, ran out of money, and couldn't get another loan. The university mailed me a letter that said academic suspension, but it might as well have said, "Go home." Only I didn't really have one, so I called Aunt Connie. She didn't ask a lot of questions, just told me, "We've got a fold-out in the den and cats that don't take to strangers." That's how I ended up in her ranch-style house behind a soybean field just off State Road 94, surrounded by the quiet kind of flat that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Connie was a retired dental assistant, big on silence, glass rooster figurines, and unsweetened iced tea. She kept the TV on game shows without sound and never looked directly at it. It felt like a house waiting for something that never showed up. I needed money, fast. I applied to every place that didn't ask for a resume. Only one called back, Penny's Diner. It was the only 24-hour joint in town. Metal roof, flickering neon, and a faded sign that read, "Best pies in the Midwest," even though we just microwaved frozen Sara Lee ones in the back. I got the evening shift, 5 p.m. to 1 a.m., 5 nights a week. My uniform was a polyester polo that clung to my skin and smelled like fryer oil no matter how often I washed it. Tips were bad. Truckers gave change. Townies gave nothing. Teenagers came in after curfew, ordered nothing, and laughed too loudly in booths they never cleaned up. The jukebox skipped every time Lion Eyes played, and the napkin holders jammed if you looked at them wrong. Still, I showed up. I needed the routine. That's when she started showing up too. She always came in around 11:30, always alone. Sat in the corner booth under the jukebox like she was entitled to it. Same hoodie every night, gray and a little stretched out at the sleeves, pulled over her hands even in summer. She had long black hair, parted right down the middle, and eyes like they were too still, like ponds that never got touched by wind. She never ordered more than black coffee and dry toast. And she stared. Not like she was zoning out. Not like she was checking me out, like she was studying me, watching something behind my eyes. At first, I thought maybe she was just weird, like the town said. They all knew her. I heard someone at the counter say her name was Elise once, but nobody called her that again. She's harmless, the regulars told me. Quiet, but harmless. That's what they always say before something bad happens. The first time she spoke to me, it was a Thursday, close to closing. The diner was half dark and even the fryers had gone silent. I brought over her usual and said, trying to sound casual, "Same as always, huh?" She looked up, mug in both hands, and in a soft, flat voice said, "You remind me of my brother. He's dead." Then she smiled. Not warm, not sad, just wrong. Like a smile she'd practiced in front of a mirror until the mechanics were right. But the timing was always off. The corners of her mouth lifted, but nothing in her eyes moved. They stayed locked on mine, unblinking. I laughed, not because it was funny, just nerves. "Weather's supposed to turn tonight," I mumbled and got out of there fast. But the whole rest of the shift I felt off balance, like the floor had tilted just a little, enough that my stomach never quite settled. When I clocked out, the parking lot was quiet except for a cicada buzz and the thrum of neon from the sign. I walked out to my car, halfway through reaching for my keys when I saw her, standing across the road, right under the lamplight, hoodie still up, arms at her sides, just watching. She didn't move, didn't wave. I got in the car, locked the doors, and drove with both hands tight on the wheel. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. That night, I barely slept. I kept seeing that smile and hearing her voice say, "He's dead," like it was no bigger a deal than forgetting your umbrella. I didn't tell Aunt Connie. What would I even say? That a regular at work made me uncomfortable? That she watched me too long? That she stared like she was memorizing my face? You don't say things like that in a town like Maple Hollow. People hear weird and they think dramatic, especially if nothing happened. So I kept showing up to work. And so did she. I started watching her more. Not just casually, really watching. She never brought a phone, never read a book. Just sat there, facing the kitchen pass-through, her eyes always finding me eventually. If someone else sat in her booth, she'd stand behind them until they moved. I saw it happen once. No words, just stood there. Didn't blink, didn't fidget. The couple got up and left. She sat down like nothing had changed. Then one night, things turned. It was a Saturday. We were steady with truckers. The air smelled like old fries and diesel from the big rigs out front. I was 3 hours into my shift before I even noticed her sitting in her booth. She was already halfway through her coffee when I brought her toast. I didn't speak. Couldn't stomach another weird comment or glassy-eyed stare. When I clocked out at 1:04 a.m., the diner was empty except for 2 guys arguing politics near the window. The air outside was wet and cold like rain had passed an hour ago but hadn't finished its business. I walked to my car and froze. All 4 tires slashed, not punctured, slashed. Long, deep, angry cuts, the kind that take time and hate. The alley behind the diner was silent. Dumpster, chain link fence, nothing else. No cameras, no lights, just shadows, and the slow drip of runoff from the roof. I spun around, half expecting someone to be there. Nothing. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I just stood, then started walking. It took me an hour to get home. Every car that passed made me jump. At one point I heard a trash can tip behind a dentist's office and I broke into a sprint. The next morning I called the sheriff's department. They sent a deputy, maybe 19 himself, chewing gum while he took photos on his phone. "Could be kids," he said. "Halloween's coming up." I told him about the girl. He looked at me like I'd asked something I shouldn't. "She's been around. Lost her brother in a wreck out on Route 12. Folks say she's odd, but not dangerous." Then he paused, real deliberate, and said, "I wouldn't stir things up. I stopped going to work after that. Said I was sick. The manager gave me grief. 'You're not the first person to have weird customers,' he said. 'You want to work or not?' I didn't answer. She was everywhere. At the gas station, outside the laundromat, sitting on the bench near the hardware store. Always alone, always still, always watching. It wasn't fear I felt. Not at first. It was exhaustion, like something was pulling at the fabric of my nerves one thread at a time. The tension built and built with nowhere to go. Then one morning, I found a folded note under the windshield of Aunt Connie's car. No words. Just a smudged smiley face in blue ink. That was it. I packed a bag that afternoon and asked Connie to borrow the car for a few days. I drove 2 towns over to stay with my cousin Wyatt, told him I just needed time to figure things out. I never went back to get the car. I don't know if she's still sitting in that booth. I haven't seen her since. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm stocking shelves at the grocery store, I'll feel it. That stillness, that stare. And I wonder, did she ever find someone else who reminded her of her brother? Or was it never about him at all? How many of us ignore the feeling that something isn't right, just because we're afraid of being wrong? And what does it cost us when we keep making excuses for things that can't be explained? Ask yourself this: what if the scariest person in the room is the one you're told not to worry about, just because everyone's gotten used to her? I didn't realize how far gone I was until I started sleeping between the psychology and business sections of the campus library. That became my normal for nearly 2 months. Back then, I told myself it was just about saving money, about keeping my head down and finishing school. But the truth was uglier. The truth was that I was scared. I transferred to Windsor Hills College in southern Kentucky in August of 2019. I was 21, broke, and tired of the pressure cooker that was my old school in Ohio. The kind of place where you blink and a semester disappears. I had a scholarship that barely covered tuition, and rent back in Columbus was bleeding me dry. Windsor Hills wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, affordable, and supposedly a place where you could breathe. That was the idea. The town itself looked like it hadn't changed in 40 years. 2-lane roads, a couple of dollar stores, shuttered-up diners, and old tobacco barns leaning into the wind. The campus was small, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's car by the bumper stickers. I found a house to rent with 3 other guys, just off Market Street. Split level, 4 bedrooms, worn-down carpet, 1 squeaky fridge, and a lawn we never mowed. It wasn't great, but it was cheap, and cheap mattered. We weren't close. I wasn't looking for friends. We coexisted, ate different meals, used different parts of the fridge. There was an unspoken rule to not ask questions. I mostly stayed in my room with my headphones on, microwaving burritos, watching reruns of sitcoms on my laptop until I fell asleep. But Kyle, he was different. He was my assigned roommate. Film major from rural Tennessee, looked like he hadn't slept since high school. Mop of curly hair, dark bags under wide eyes, always talking fast, thinking faster. At first, I figured he was just another eccentric art student. He ranted about professors, said the town was full of liars, fake people. I laughed it off. Everyone complains in college. But he had a weird energy. Restless, like he was wound too tight. He'd walk barefoot through the house at night, mumbling to himself, eyes tracking invisible shapes on the ceiling. He wrote strange lists on napkins and left them on the kitchen table. Words like ferment, static, the mouth behind the wall. Once I asked him about it. He just grinned and said, "Cataloging dreams, film concept, you wouldn't get it." I tried to ignore it, but it started getting harder. He stopped cleaning up after himself. Not just plates in the sink, entire meals left to rot. Whole chicken legs, sandwiches half-eaten, cereal floating in stale milk for days. When I confronted him, he didn't get mad. He just smiled like we were in on the same joke, said it was footage for a fermentation experiment. At night, he'd play these weird loops of industrial noise, screeching metal, static, distorted breathing. I'd bang on the wall. In the morning, he'd pretend it never happened, said I must have dreamed it. The worst part was how he started talking about me, loudly. I'd walk past the living room and hear him tell the others I talked in my sleep, that I cried at night. None of it was true, but they started acting different. Quiet when I entered a room, looking at me like I was the one unraveling. Then my debit card disappeared. I kept it in a wallet inside my locked nightstand. A day later, a $40 charge showed up from a gas station down the road. Kyle mentioned he'd walked there the night before. I asked him straight out, "Did you use my card?" He put a hand to his chest. "Why would I steal from a roommate, man? That's messed up." I didn't believe him, but I couldn't prove it. I went to the landlord. He laughed. "Boys will be boys. Figure it out or move." So I did. That night, I packed a backpack and started sleeping at the library. No drama, just survival. The second floor became mine. Between the shelves, next to a dusty outlet I could plug my phone into, I kept a pillow and hoodie tucked behind a stack of old yearbooks. I showered at the campus gym, ate from vending machines. No one noticed. No one cared. Then he started texting me. The first one came at 2:12 a.m. "You'll regret leaving." I hadn't told him I wasn't coming back. I blocked his number. The next night he messaged me from a new Facebook account with a profile photo of TV Static. "Room feels wrong without you." I reported it to campus housing. They were sympathetic but helpless. Off-campus housing wasn't their jurisdiction. "We'll keep an eye on it," they said. I knew they wouldn't. I stopped going to class. I couldn't focus. My hands shook during presentations. People told me I looked pale, tired. They asked if I was okay. But nobody really wanted the answer. I found a Craigslist ad for a small room behind a house near the truck stop. It was cheap. No furniture. But the woman renting it was kind. Older, quiet. She didn't ask questions. Said I could move in tomorrow. I packed everything into 2 duffel bags. Left behind some books, some clothes, my sheets. I didn't want to take anything he might have touched. It started raining while I walked down Market Street, that cold, soaking rain that makes your clothes feel like concrete. Then I heard footsteps. Kyle, 2 blocks back, umbrella under his arm, smiling, like we were headed to class together. He didn't say a word, just followed. I ducked into a gas station and stood by the trail mix aisle until my hands stopped shaking. He never came inside. I moved into the new place that night. No fanfare. Just locked the door and sat on the floor, breathing. He kept texting, not every day, just enough to keep the fear alive. Quotes from horror movies, images of doorknobs. Once, a photo of my old chair. The caption said, "Still warm." I changed my number again, reported it again. Police said, "Unless there's a threat, it's not actionable." Campus shrugged. No record, no leverage. I started carrying my keys between my fingers, double-locking every door, Googling restraining orders. I learned that in small towns, the idea of normal matters more than the truth. You can scream without anyone hearing. You can break down and still not be believed. Even now, years later, I don't trust first impressions. When I look at roommate listings, I ask for social media. I message their past roommates. It doesn't take much for your life to tilt off its axis. One missed paycheck, one diagnosis, one bad decision you couldn't even see coming until it was already behind you, cracking the rear view. I didn't plan to end up in Clearbrook, Iowa. Nobody does. It's the kind of town you only hear about if you're born into it or broke enough to have nowhere else to go. For me, it was the latter. By early 2021, I was 23, flat broke, and walking through the ashes of plans that had never made it past their first spark. College had fizzled when my mom's cancer came back. The savings we'd scraped together went fast. Chemo, radiation, prescriptions with names I couldn't pronounce but prices I couldn't forget. My dad was gone before we could ask him to stay, left during her second hospital stay. Divorce papers showed up not long after. I remember her holding them in her lap like they were something delicate, like heartbreak was something new. I didn't blame her. I didn't even blame him. I blamed whatever invisible hand kept pushing our lives just a little further off course every time we tried to steer back. When we packed up for Clearbrook, it was because Patty, my mom's second cousin or something, had a spare room and didn't ask too many questions. I had never met her before, didn't even know she existed until the day we loaded our lives into a borrowed truck and crossed the state line. Clearbrook was small, flat, and sun-bleached. Just a few dozen houses scattered along a cracked main road and surrounded by endless, whispering fields of corn. The town had 2 churches, 1 school, and a bar that seemed to change names every few years but never changed its clientele. Everyone either worked at the meatpacking plant or commuted 45 minutes to Cedar Rapids. The first week, I told myself it was temporary, that I'd stay just long enough to get us steady. But time moves weird in towns like that. Days blur. Plans soften around the edges. Next thing you know, it's been months. I applied anywhere with lights still on. Ended up at Quick Fuel, a gas station that sat on the outer edge of town where the cornfields gave way to gravel shoulders. 2 pumps, one of which was always broken. A cooler with a freezer door that stuck hard every time you opened it. Coffee machine hadn't worked since 2019, according to the sign scrawled in faded Sharpie. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying bees. Rick, the manager, hired me after a 5-minute interview that involved more staring than talking. He looked like someone who sweat just from standing, always slick at the hairline, his glasses sliding down the bridge of his nose. Training was a joke. Mostly consisted of him leaning too close and calling me sweetheart with a smile that made my spine stiffen. I learned quickly. Mop the floors, keep your head down, don't give him a reason to linger. The night shift paid 50 cents more per hour, so I took it. That meant I worked when the bar crowd rolled through, drunks with slurred words and sloppy grins, teenagers high on stolen energy drinks, long-haul truckers grateful for hot pockets and working restrooms. You learn to read people fast when it's just you, the register, and the hum of a freezer keeping time. I got used to the rhythm, but I wasn't ready for the man who started showing up every night at 1:15 a.m. He walked in the same way each time, slow, deliberate, almost like his steps were synced with something I couldn't hear. Brown coat, gray work boots, jeans that were too clean for someone wandering around at that hour. He didn't speak, didn't buy anything, didn't even look around. He walked toward the back aisle near the freezer, stopped, and just watched me. Not the distracted glance of someone killing time, not the vague curiosity of a drunk eyeing the snack aisle. This was different, focused, still. His stare didn't move. The first night I figured maybe he was just off. You get that out here. People who don't quite fit anywhere. But the second night he came again. Same time, same routine. No sound but the door chime when he entered and left. My stomach dropped the moment I saw him. By the third night, my skin buzzed with static the moment the clock hit 1:10. I started pretending to stock shelves just so I didn't have to meet his eyes. He still watched, always from the same spot. Under the broken security camera I hadn't told Rick about because I wasn't sure he'd fix it even if I did. Eventually, I asked, voice tight, "Can I help you find something?" He smiled. Crooked, tight-lipped, like it took effort. Then he walked out without a word. That would have been the end of it if it didn't keep happening. Night after night, same time, same man, silent, unblinking, staring like I was a painting he was trying to memorize. Rick didn't notice. He was always in the back or pretending to check inventory. One night after he left early like usual, I stepped outside to lock up my bike and nearly dropped my keys. The man was standing 5 feet from the bike rack, closer than he'd ever been, still, watching. "You don't live far," he said. "You walk that way, right?" I froze, mouth dry. I didn't answer. Just turned, walked back inside, locked the door, and sat behind the counter gripping the pocket knife I found in the lost and found drawer. I told Rick the next day. He waved it off. Small towns. Everybody knows everybody's routines. He sipped from a paper cup of stale gas station coffee like that explained everything. But it didn't, and it kept getting worse. A few nights later, my phone rang just after midnight. No caller ID, no voicemail, just silence. Then, breathing. Slow, steady, like someone was standing too close to the receiver. I hung up. The next night it happened again. Same number, same breath. I blocked it, but new numbers kept calling. Always after midnight. Always the same breath. One night I looked out the front window and saw him standing across the street under the one working streetlight. Not moving. Not hiding. Just standing there like it was part of the plan. I raised my phone like I was calling the cops. He turned and walked away. That night I couldn't sleep. The feeling didn't leave. It followed me into the shower, curled under my sheets, sat with me as I stared at the ceiling. I started biking faster, checking behind me constantly, started wearing my backpack on my front, pepper spray in one pocket, scissors in the other. Patty noticed. "You got a weird look lately," she said one morning, "like you're waiting for something." "I'm just tired," I told her, but it wasn't the truth. I begged Rick to switch to afternoons. He shrugged like it wasn't the first time he'd heard it. "Maybe you're not cut out for the small-town grind," he said with a smirk. I didn't argue. I just stopped showing up, left my name tag in the mailbox behind the building and blocked his number. No one followed up. No one ever did. Like they were used to people vanishing off the night schedule. I moved in with a cousin near Cedar Rapids. Bigger place, streetlights, a dog that barked at every noise. It felt like a different world, safer. But I kept checking windows. I kept expecting to see him standing by the mailbox or just beyond the fence. He never came. But the fear didn't leave. 3 months passed. I got a job at a coffee shop. The hours were better, the faces less familiar. I kept pepper spray in my purse and a knife in my glove box. Not paranoid, just prepared. Then one night I got a Facebook message from a girl I didn't know. Her name was Emily. "Hey," it said. You used to work nights at Quick Fuel, right? Do you know anything about a guy in a brown coat who shows up around 1 a.m., doesn't buy anything, just watches? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I closed the app. I never answered her, because here's the truth. You don't always get closure. You don't always find out if the danger was real, or if you were just one more name on a list he kept in his head. And worse, someone else is probably on it now. I still drive past Quick Fuel sometimes, still flickering, still open, still waiting. And I wonder, how close did I really get?